Good evening. Today is October 15th, 2022. I'm Robert Crescione.
I'm John Gatsis.
Welcome to America in Danger. Thanks for tuning in tonight. You know, we are in the midst of, I guess, a great reset with planned shortages and supply chain issues and contrived crises that abound no end.
Not to mention the purposeful unleashing of criminals on the citizenry.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good one, and that's a typical communist tactic.
It is. It's part of the right out of the playbook.
It is. You know, and another mass shooting in Raleigh. I guess that's considered a mass shooting with 5.
Yeah, I think the definition is 2 or more,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken. And in this particular case, I would say what scant details we have meet the criteria for a mass shooting. But oddly, there doesn't seem to be much in the way of detail about this one.
Well, I couldn't find anything other than just what was revealed initially.
Right.
You know, there's no discussion of the weapon used. There's no discussion of any kind of motive or any of those things. So,
I think the phrase used today is being memory holed.
yeah.
Very quickly being shoved down. Because I haven't heard one scintilla of discussion about it since that first couple of hours that it happened.
Yeah.
I just find that interesting. Other than Biden and the usual drumbeat for we need to ban these assault weapons. And I think that might be at the crux of why they're not making a big deal out of it, because as what eyewitnesses are reporting, or the one or two that I saw, discussing it, he had a shotgun.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if I'm not mistaken, that's Joe Biden's weapon of choice, right?
Well, now that you mention that is correct.
Right.
You don't need an assault weapon. Shotgun.
That's right. You don't need assault. Just get a shotgun.
Right. Well, I guess this apparently proves that shotguns can be deadly as well.
I guess that's what it proves. Now, I'm not that sure of the facts here, but
right.
I am fascinated that for some reason they're not making a big deal out of this. And normally they hop on these mass shootings. And unless some element of it doesn't really fit the narrative. And a big element that has to be present for the narrative to be perpetuated is the presence of a so-called assault-style weapon, an AR-15 or an AK-47. I think that's why we're not hearing too much about this.
I think that's probably a good
just an
assessment.
Educated guess, but I think that's probably what's going on.
I think that's a good assessment. Something else that is common to a huge majority, and I think it's upwards of 98, 99%. There's a common thread that runs through all of these shootings.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the fact that the individuals were on meds.
Right.
Meds for depression, for anxiety, whatever.
Right.
But that's a common thread. And, that really makes you stop and wonder how much that contributes to these things, because if it wasn't some sort of contribution, why is it such a high percentage of these shooters are on these meds?
Well, I'll tell you another thing. This is just popped into my head, but what you just said, and this is rank speculation, so I'm not making any,
disclaimer there.
Yeah, right, absolutely. But what's another thing that might cause somebody to not want to press this story? Well, what if this individual is like a trans individual or something like that? They would so quickly memory hold this story, it wouldn't be funny. It's palpable to me.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's certainly obviously
definitely is.
Obviously, it's a tragedy. It was a nice neighborhood, and not that matters. But I mean, it's not. It's like all these things. People are just minding their own business, and the next thing they're getting shot by some lunatic.
Yeah.
And so
it pays to carry concealed.
It pays to be prepared for.
It does.
You just can't do it. I mean, just like you can't do anything about being on an airplane that goes down or getting in a car accident. But you can exercise good common sense. Mm-hmm. And you should always be aware of your surroundings.
Oh, absolutely.
You hear gunfire, don't just assume, that, you should just have some modest amount of thought that goes into,
look around when you come out of your house. Look around when you walk down the street.
That's right.
These people that walk down the street like this with their dog, they're a prime candidate for assault.
That or just falling into an open manhole. I mean, or slamming into a telephone pole. I mean, they just aren't paying any attention to what they're so oblivious to what's going on around them. They're leaving themselves open.
Well, talking about memory holding these stories when they don't fit an agenda. One story that's somewhat been memory hold as well is the Thailand shooting.
Right.
You know, we're not hearing much follow-up on that.
No.
And the sad part about that, 38 people were killed by this individual.
Right.
Now, the interesting thing about it is Thailand, and one reason that they don't want to talk about these things is Thailand has every gun law that these loony left are talking about implementing.
That's right.
You know, to own a gun in Thailand, you've got to have a license.
Mm-hmm.
All right, in the U.S., you don't. You just go down and you buy it at Walmart or a gun shop, whatever you want to do. Thailand, you got to have a license.
Right.
All right. In Thailand, to get that license, you have to demonstrate a clear need of that firearm.
Right.
Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be self-defense, but you have to demonstrate, well, I want to do target shooting with this group, with this approved group.
Right.
Right. You can't just say, well, I want one.
Right.
No, that doesn't work.
Well, they probably, I'm guessing, but they probably don't have something in a constitutional document that absolutely guarantees that is a right of their citizenry, an immutable, non-negotiable right.
In fact, you won't find that in any document except one.
That's right.
And that would be our Constitution.
That's right.
You know, in Thailand, you got to be 20 years old to own one.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, you can't, 18-year-old can't buy anything over there. And there are extreme background checks over there to get a firearm, to get a license to buy the firearm. This is not even to have the firearm.
And I suspect the firearms that are even an option to purchase are probably very strictly limited.
I'm sure. But the background checks check for personal conduct.
Okay, so that's part of the social credit score kind of concept.
Living condition.
Yeah.
Income and criminal records. So that's kind of an all-around check that some bureaucrat looks at and says,
"Yeah, this guy, we're not letting this guy have a gun." Right.
Let's see, what else? There's a licensing period. If you let your license expire, then they take your gun away.
Yeah.
And complete records on this. And there's a limit. One.
Oh, wow, I'm sure that's true.
One per.
Well, you know, and I understand there's probably people out there that would hear all that and say, that sounds great to me. You know, why do we want to just allow, you know, any Tom, Dick, and Harry to go buy a gun? These things are dangerous. But here's the thing.
I would suggest ask the 38 people who were killed.
Well, that's
by this
right.
nut job.
But even if you want to look at it from an even broader perspective, I would say, look, you know, there's no question that ready access to firearms leads to probably more accidental or even purposeful death by firearms, you know, in general. But it also serves to check the biggest mass murders, which are always perpetrated by governments against unarmed citizens. Thailand is a hideously authoritarian state. Anybody who thinks they want to live in Thailand, past going to the beaches and hanging out for, you know, some drug parties that they go, you know, as like 25-year-olds who go there to hang out and hike and everything, just get caught up in their legal system for 5 minutes or any of those things. Yeah, it's not a society in which one really wants to live. And part of the reason those societies are that way is because the state has a strict monopoly on force. And that's what we're talking about here. Who are you going to allow to have a monopoly on force? And every other nation state that exists or has existed has, for the most part, ceded that authority to the government and denied it to the people from whom the government is supposed to derive its authority to govern. Okay, and especially in the Western world, that's supposed to be true. The founders were adamant on that point. They saw the history of disarming the citizenry, and very, very, very strongly made that. In my opinion, that should have been the First Amendment, because from an armed population, all of the other rights and constitutional benefits accrue. Without the firearms, you know, protection for an armed citizenry, it's just words on paper.
That's exactly right. You know, talking about authoritarians and government murdering people, mass murdering people, you just have to walk across the border into Cambodia.
That's right.
You know, Pol Pot killed, 10 million?
2 million, I
2
think.
million,
But
2 million,
but
yeah,
it
2
was
million.
in proportion to the population of that small country.
Right.
It was right up there with Mao's 100 million and
Yeah.
Stalin's 50 million, and
Yep.
and those are all conservative estimates. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. We
know,
really don't know because the records
really
over
don't.
there are not.
I do know.
They're not exactly.
They know. I
accurate.
do know. I've told this a couple times before, but I was like kind of into the Guinness Book of Records when I was a kid. And in those days, in the 70s, they listed Mao Zedong as the #1 world record holder for mass murder at over 100 million. That entry in subsequent volumes was deleted, and they
Right.
moderated that, and they've
Yep.
really sugar-coated that whole part of that history in China.
Well, people look at China today. I mean, there's murder going on in China. There's government-sanctioned murder going on in
Absolutely.
China. You don't load people up in boxcars and send them somewhere for their health,
That's right.
for their own benefit. So let's face it. Now, here on the domestic front, we have, in reference to this shooting in Raleigh, Biden and numerous politicians are reaching their hands
as always,
and coming out. We've got to stop this. But I don't remember Biden ever saying anything about the 448 people who have been killed in Chicago this
Nope.
year so far.
Nope.
Not a word.
That's a lot of people.
Or the couple of hundred that have been killed in New Orleans or St. Louis or any of these other cities that have these murder problems.
Mm-hmm.
Not a word.
Nope.
Not a word. Lori Lightfoot, she'll grouse about this shooting in Raleigh,
All right.
but she won't say anything about her own city. She's out there dancing and singing songs.
Uploading videos of her lip syncing to some
Videos.
blues music or something.
That's exactly right. Well, who was the one that got the spirit in her when she went to see Tony?
Yeah, what was her name? Her
And
name
couldn't
is,
wear the mask. That's
she's
how
mayor
those
of San
people are.
Francisco. What is her? Breed. Something Breed.
Yeah.
London Breed.
Yeah. I tell you what, but Chicago, and they're celebrating because homicides are down this year.
Right.
They've killed 448 thus far, but homicides are down.
And that's how they report it. We've enjoyed a
Exactly.
20% reduction in homicide. Oh, good. Went down from thousands to
Yeah,
a couple thousand.
yeah. It's they're down 16% compared to last year.
Right.
Wow, that's quite an accomplishment.
Well,
I tell
all
you.
these places are experiencing record-setting crime rates.
Yes, they are.
And it's
Absolutely are, and that's all planned and encouraged.
very planned. I understand why they do it. I guess they figure we just try and talk our way past it for elections because that's an issue that motivates people to vote a certain way.
Yes, it does.
And so I guess they're hoping to move their little revolution along fast enough to where they can't be yanked out of office. But I think the crime thing and the inflation thing, I think those are going to be the two primary motivators in the upcoming midterms.
I think so.
I hope
Because
so,
now you're
anyway.
seeing a few Democrats take a little stronger stance on crime, but the election's coming up.
Well, that's right.
know.
Well, first of all, there's so much absolute unhinged behavior. Just an example I read right before the show. I don't know if you caught this. In Ohio, one of the suburbs of Cleveland, okay, some two assistant principals in a school let 4 thugs who are running from the police into the school to protect them from the police. That was their stated reason for allowing them to enter the school in some kind of little sequestered area. And so they felt like it was in the best interest of those youth. Okay. Now one of them, they were in a stolen vehicle. Okay, and one of them had charges for robbery pending. Okay, but these two assistant principals. Now I'm sorry if I'm going to advocate that people who live in that community should act in some way
Absolutely.
to get those two fired.
Those people need to be gone.
They need to be gone faster than they can imagine it being possible.
I'm sure that those two assistant principals probably arranged a drag queen show for the first and second graders as well.
Almost certainly.
Yeah, it's that mentality that just is. We're living on a different planet right now.
Well, it is hard to understand some of this stuff.
It is. It really is.
I thought that I was past the point where I could be surprised by any of the things that these people would do. that's one of the things that continues to surprise. Not so much that they're doing that, but what has surprised me is the degree to which people have. I mean, I realize there's a lot of people that are mad about it and they're taking some action, but I would have thought the response would be so immediate and so swift and so definitive. I would have thought it'd be almost coming to blows over it. And a lot of these parents, a lot of these communities seem to be sort of tolerant of it. And I think they're just scared, or they don't. I can't explain it because I know what my response would be.
Well, in this case in particular, which I don't know anything about the story other than what you just told me, but those two assistant principals should be charged with aiding and abetting.
Absolutely.
Because that's what they would have been charged with 50 years ago.
That's correct.
They would have been hauled down to the police station in cuffs,
right,
walked in, and charged with aiding and abetting.
Well, just the very idea that the police chasing criminals, onto school grounds, and the assistant principals would, and everybody gets so exercised about putting children at risk. What could put children more at risk than letting thugs into the school?
Yeah.
Now the claim is that they let him into this sequestered area, which is supposed to be sort of like this chamber where nobody can come in. I don't know. The whole thing to me, though, I mean, they're trying to outwoke themselves with this stuff. Well, I'm hoping they've outwoke themselves out of a job.
Well, I think some have. I think that parents and people that are looking at these things and seeing these things they're becoming more and more outraged.
Yeah, and again, I guess I'm surprised the response hasn't been more dramatic and more swift.
Well, one of the problems there is that people have been strategically placed, woke individuals have been strategically placed in positions of authority, like district attorneys, police chiefs.
Right.
They try to condition the police to this, the senior level police to this. So you have no one to go to in these things. And that's a very dangerous situation.
Well,
because that can definitely end up with some street justice there.
Well, absolutely. Well, an even more local story, and it sort of feeds into my sense of wonderment at how more people are pushing back. Did you see the local story? Actually, the Harnett County man. It's national. Well, it's a national story right now. I don't remember his name. He went to serve jury duty out of 75, 80 people. He didn't want to wear a mask.
Yes, I did. I heard about that.
So, long story short, he went in there. There was no mask requirement posted in the building. There was we don't have a mask mandate in the state. Most of the people in the group weren't wearing a mask, but somehow he got called in the judge's chamber, and the judge, who wasn't wearing a mask, told him that, well, in his courtroom he had to wear a mask, and he said, do you understand the consequences of not doing so? He said, well, he said, I'm not wearing a mask. He said, before I really thought about it, he said, I'm not wearing a mask. They put him in jail. They threw him in jail.
Yeah.
Okay, and
outrageous.
You know what? That judge, there needs to be some consequences there of some kind.
There absolutely do. The whole mask thing, what really irks me, I see people wearing masks in the grocery store. I see them wearing masks, in various locations. Down under their nose.
Yeah.
Or under their mouth even, just on their chin.
Right.
Look, people, if you're going to wear a mask, at least wear it properly, please, or take the darn thing off.
Right.
Good grief. If you're going to wear it down on your chin, what's it doing?
It's almost like it's a fashion statement.
It is.
I'm wearing the mask, but I don't want this thing over my face because it sure is inconvenient. Then, to me, it's not that different than what, like the punk kids who like to wear their pants half hanging off prison style or something. It's like a completely impractical, stupid fashion statement, which has undertones that are disgusting.
Yes, you've got that right.
Yeah.
Well, we got to take a little break. When we come back, we're going to talk about PayPal a little bit.
Right.
And this is an interesting situation where I really feel that PayPal has just overstepped the bounds of any corporation. So we'll talk about that when we get back. Stay tuned for more America in Danger. We'll be right back.
Are you afraid to answer the phone because of bill collectors? A Chapter 13 plan can help. Chapter 13 allows people with too many bills to work out a debt repayment plan under federal law. It helps you control your debts instead of your debts controlling you. Chapter 13 stops creditors from harassing you and stops repossessions and foreclosures. It allows you to answer the phone again without fear or worry. Call H. Frank Allen, Attorney at Law, a debt relief agency providing bankruptcy relief under the Bankruptcy Code.
Safe and secure. These two words are simple yet powerful. In order to feel this way, you should know that you have the tools necessary to provide safety and security for yourself and your loved ones. As with any tools, learning how to properly use them is best learned from experts who we know we can trust. Experts who have a proven track record and a commitment to serve and protect. Enroll now in Sheriff Keystone's North Carolina Concealed Handgun Carry class, taught at the CPF Training Center in Rocky Mount. Sheriff Stone utilizes a first-in-class classroom environment and indoor firing range. This ensures a training experience that is welcoming to both first-time firearms students and those with more experience. An attentive staff that takes time to teach students the legal requirements of becoming a permitted concealed carry citizen. In addition, Sheriff Clee Atkinson teaches students situational awareness, self-defense, and skills needed to avoid becoming a victim. As you know, Sheriff Stone and Sheriff Atkinson have committed their lives to serving and protecting. There is a reason Sheriff Stone and Sheriff Atkinson's class book in advance. Come learn from two of the region's most seasoned and professional public servants. Safety and security, two simple but powerful words that can be a part of who you and your family are. Call 252-813-8898. Register today.
Every dad deserves comfort that's just right. And at the Badcock Home Furniture and More Father's Day sale, that's exactly what you'll find. Starting with buy one, get one free recliners. Plus, save hundreds on reclining sofas and sectionals. And get a free foundation with select mattresses, including Sealy. Find the styles and savings that are just right for Dad. Only at Badcock Home Furniture and More. Just right.
All right, we are back. And a lot of people know PayPal. A lot of people use
Sure.
PayPal. It's very
Fairly ubiquitous, yeah.
convenient way to pay.
Yep.
You know, you get let me check out with PayPal. Boom.
Mm-hmm.
Draft your account. You're good to go.
Right.
Or if you need a payment sent to you, you can deal with it that way. Well, PayPal, or rather individuals at PayPal, got the notion that they should take up the mantle of misinformation.
Right. Policing misinformation.
Policing misinformation. They wanted to be like the girl that was going to be the
Nina Jankowicz.
Nina Jankowicz.
Of the Disinformation Governance Board.
Yes, the Disinformation Governance Board. Well, PayPal said, oh, well, we can do that, and we have direct access to people's accounts, so we'll just fine them $2,500 if they post misinformation.
Right.
On social media, Twitter, Facebook, wherever.
Right.
So, first of all, I don't even know how that's legal.
I don't either.
You know, and if it is, because they incorporate that in their terms of use agreement somehow, then we need legislators immediately to draft a simple bill that says no corporation can fine you for your opinions, for your behavior outside of anything that does not impact them.
That's correct.
And if it does impact them, their avenue is in the courts.
That's correct. I mean, it's really an unbelievable overarch and an unbelievable intrusion into what has always been, you know, I mean, traditionally, banks and payment processors, that's all they do. They don't pay any attention to the nature of the people who are in using their service, you know, and their opinions.
And they take a nice little cut.
That's correct.
I might add on that.
Correct.
So they're getting their money.
Well, I think, first of all, you know, I doubt the average PayPal balance is more than a couple $100 for people that use PayPal. I mean, and they're going to fine you $2,500.
Yeah, they're going to go directly to your bank account or credit card that's tied to that.
Right, based on an assessment that you're posting or perpetuating misinformation.
Yeah.
Which, first of all, you know, it's annoying me that people seem to have, you know, nobody wants to use the dictionary anymore. But, you know, I mean, misinformation by definition is just erroneous information, mistaken.
Mistaken.
So really, what they're saying is we're going to fine you $2,500 for sharing information that you, in good faith, thought was reasonable. Okay.
Yep.
Disinformation, which would be the more appropriate, descriptor here, is purposely incorrect, false information disseminated to create, it happens a lot in wartime. You plant disinformation with the enemy and so forth.
Correct.
Now, even that, I think, is not fair game. I mean, no private company no body period has any business, fining people arbitrarily outside the courts, okay, for anything that they say,
I agree.
short of just incitement to violence or direct threats to people's lives.
Yeah.
Okay, that's always been considered a threshold.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I don't understand PayPal here, and they walked it back. They claim that, we didn't know. That's BS.
Right.
And they also claim it's really not their policy. That's also BS. That is their policy. They simply got called on it, and it reveals their mindset, and it's why I'll be leaving PayPal.
Absolutely. And they only walked it back in politician-style fashion.
Right.
Because what they walked back to, they said, yeah, we're not going to fine you for misinformation or opinion, but if you spread hate, we're still going to fine you.
As defined by what? By what objective criteria are they defining hate? I don't think there are any objective criteria for that.
There are none, and we've already seen where people have been accosted and aggressively pursued for calling the transgender crowd that seeks out young children to perform some kind of gender affirmation
mutilating surgery.
They've been called groomers, and that's considered hate speech.
Right.
So PayPal is, I'm leaving PayPal as well. And if you have PayPal, I suggest you walk away as well.
There are alternatives. Now, I don't know if they're any better, but they haven't demonstrated yet that they aren't any better. So I will vote with my feet.
Well, it's the same as GoFundMe.
Right.
I'm sorry. If there's a cause on GoFundMe, no matter how strong I feel about that cause, I will not use GoFundMe because of what they have done.
That's correct.
They pulled funding for certain groups because they were conservative groups.
And yet they perpetuate and promote funding for the most violent, awful entities.
Absolutely.
Because it fits their communist violent revolution narrative that they're perpetuating, which is just such an oxymoron. I don't understand how these people who are so successful, in the society, using an economic model that allows them to create and innovate, and yet they embrace all this communist nonsense. I really don't understand it, other than the fact that that's always what happens with fascism. And fascism and communism are fundamentally the same thing.
They are, and I think you hit the nail on the head. That's a communist thing. We talked about communism last week on the show and how it's spread through the government and universities and everywhere, the media, everywhere. And, we see that with the recent hubbub about Columbus Day, which is now Indigenous Persons Day.
Right.
Well, I think we should be grateful that Columbus had the guts and the wherewithal to load up on a little rickety ship and sail off to the unknown.
Well, the left always studies historical figures by their worst flaw, not by their greatest accomplishments.
Exactly.
That's just their MO. Well, that in combination with it has to fit again their narrative. They're the objective right now within academia and a lot of the institutions is the dismantling and destruction of Western civilization.
Yes, it is.
Now, that's foolish because Western civilization, whatever its flaws throughout history, has been the engine for the greatest amount of prosperity and liberty, and Western civilization's greatest manifestation of that has been the United States of America.
Yes, it has.
Okay, but these narratives about how Columbus committed genocide, none of that is even true. Pre-Columbian America was basically one giant slave camp with these various tribes of Indians.
It was. Pre-Columbian America, there was slavery,
right,
cannibalism,
right,
mass human sacrifice. the Aztecs, the Iroquois, the indigenous persons of the United States, they all engaged in slavery.
That's right.
And warfare. I'm so tired of these people who paint this pastoral scene
Right.
of the indigenous people
Right.
in the U.S. before
Right.
settlers came here as being, they were one with nature.
Right, and peaceful.
They were peaceful, and they loved each
And
other.
lived in balance with the environment.
Right.
That's all. That is a lie.
It is a
all
lie.
Absolute
It is a
lie.
In fact, if you really study on those things, you find out that typically the tribes found a location to settle for a while. This is why they were nomadic.
Right.
And ultimately, it became so filth-laden and just uninhabitable.
Right. They destroyed all the natural
Then it was
resources.
time to move on.
They consumed the natural
Yeah.
resources within their grasp without any regard for conserving their living situation. Yeah, complete. And their slave trading practices, as I understand it, they did a lot of slave trade amongst themselves before Columbus ever landed,
Yes, they
and
did.
their practices were brutal. They'd cut the foot off of a slave to make sure he couldn't escape, that sort of thing. And so, in time, when they realized that the settlers were also willing to buy slaves and everything, the slaves were happy to be sold to the Europeans.
Yeah.
They would, because that was a better deal, okay, than dealing with the indigenous people's slave trade.
Correct. They were brutal. In fact,
Right.
when they had this tribal warfare, the captured warriors and women and children were immediately brought into the other camps. They were tortured.
Right.
They were abused. Many of them were sacrificed for the deaths of warriors and various things. Now, that's not to exclude the fact that, there was a pretty serious atrocities
But they're not unique to
during the growth of the U.S.
not.
They are not unique to this nation.
And they're not
even extreme.
Correct. They're not even that egregious compared to other things in other parts of the world. Not that long ago, there was a genocide in Rwanda where the Hutsis and the Tutus, thousands killed each other with machetes. It was just this incredible,
brutal, vicious
unbelievable,
murders,
right,
and torture.
No, I'll go on record and say, look, I understand that depredations occurred, but I am grateful that history unfolded the way it did. For one thing, it led to my existence, and I'm happy about that.
There you go.
Okay, so people who say, oh, gee, this is how. You owe your very existence to history unfolding the way it did up to the point you were conceived. So that's just sort of a scientific, timeline kind of a fact, but you need to think in those terms. And to the extent that, so much was done to my people in the past, but you still benefited from those same exploitations as anybody else did because you're here in this prosperous society, which has long since dispensed with those the worst elements of those things that were practiced worldwide. This nation and the Western world in general were the first to do away with slavery, not the last. Okay? So I'm not buying into any of that.
No.
I'm grateful Columbus landed on these shores.
You got that right. As am I. I am grateful for all of the founders of this nation.
That's
and
right.
for all of the people who laid the groundwork for what we have today.
Well, I want to tell people that, before you embark on tearing something down, figure out what it took to build it, and maybe try and build something yourself. I'm tired of being lectured by people who never built anything at all.
That's a problem we have today. We have so many people who are in these positions of power, especially in the government.
You're right.
Who have never really held a job, who have never had to produce. In the government, you don't worry about profit.
That's right.
You just
by definition,
raise more taxes.
Well, by definition, you're a parasite.
You're a parasite, exactly. You're living off the public dole. And speaking of which, you sent me this article about repealing the 16th Amendment. I think that would be an outstanding thing to do.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't don't know what the 16th Amendment is because a lot of people don't study anything past the first 10.
Right.
And they really don't even study those.
Right.
They just know.
That's right.
16th Amendment ushered in the income tax.
Right. Which it's important to note. The Constitution had to be amended because the income tax was unconstitutional.
Yes.
Okay? Without amending the Constitution, as written by the founders, they deemed it an egregious act and an imposition on one's liberty to tax a person's income.
Yep.
Okay, so that had to be changed and written into the. Now, what I did learn from that article that I thought was very interesting, it's just a point of history, but the left has always been trying to get a progressive income tax installed in this country. Now, I knew some of the history of this. I didn't know this. The conservatives, they were able to put it down repeatedly. I didn't understand that the strategy, their strategy was, they said, well, you know what, rather than have a vote on this, let's subject it to an amendment process. Their calculation was, we'll never get 3/4 of the states to have to agree to a constitutional amendment. Much to their surprise, state after state after state ratified that damn thing. Okay, and so that's how we ended up with the 16th Amendment.
Interesting.
All right, so that shows the folly, and our side does that a lot. They just say, well, we're not gonna push back against this in Congress because we don't want. When it gets to the Supreme Court, they'll find it unconstitutional.
Right.
Well, a lot of times they don't. And so the spineless politicians who purport to be on our side, they need to identify as somebody with a spine.
Yeah, I heard a politician say one time, well, everything is constitutional until it's deemed not.
Right.
And that's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard someone say.
Right.
So, in other words, everything is legal until you're caught.
Right.
That's the equivalent of what that individual was saying.
And
we elect politicians who should know. So if you go in there and you're voting on a piece of legislation that easily can be non-constitutional or unconstitutional simply by glancing at the Constitution,
right,
then don't tell me it's up to someone else. No, it's up to you.
Right.
It's up to that politician.
Well, you're operating in a disingenuous manner.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand that thinking is kind of analogous to the possession is 9/10 of the law kind of thing. It's like, well, I got it. If you want it, you're gonna have to sue me, and that's often impractical.
And that's fine when you're dealing in personal relationships. But when you're dealing with the whole population, you can't be like that.
Well, when you take an oath,
and if you are, you should be eliminated very quickly from the political circus.
Well, if you take an oath to uphold the Constitution, to be faithful to the Constitution, then disingenuously, doing end runs around it and saying, well, this probably doesn't pass constitutional muster, but by the time it gets up to the Supreme Court, I'll have made hay out of it, or I'll have gotten the political mileage I want, or it'll have done what I want. Well, see, I'm sorry, I don't have much use for those people.
No, I don't either, and that's what it's all about: political mileage, political capital. That's why representatives are elected every 2 years. That's why senators were elected by state legislatures.
Right.
We need to roll them out often. They need to go. We need to get rid of them, and increasing the vote does not do that.
No, in fact, it does just the opposite.
Making voting so simple and easy that a caveman could do
it does
not fix the problems in Washington.
It actually makes it worse.
In fact, I was so angry the other day. I heard someone speaking, politician out of Georgia, and she was talking. It wasn't Stacey Abrams, by the way. It was someone else. And she was talking about the ever-increasing suppression of minority votes.
Right.
Now, I don't know where she got that from.
Yeah, because that's statistically provably false.
It's false. It's false. In every election where new voting laws were passed, and not these liberal laws, but where voter integrity laws were passed or voter ID was passed.
Right.
In every one of those elections, not most, every one of those elections, minority turnout increased.
That's right.
So you're going to tell me that, well, these laws are suppressing minority vote. Well, show me the data.
Yeah, well.
Show me the data.
Yeah, well, they just want an excuse to have, motor voter, internet voting, mail-in voting, all the things that are basically tools for grift and for theft.
Cheating, exactly. And, back to the tax thing. This is what the government has collected this year, right? In 11 months. $4,408,452,000,000. Now that has been sucked out of our economy.
Right.
Now, on top of that, on top of stealing that from the American people, the government has spent, another $7 trillion this year?
Right.
On wasted programs?
Right. And claims that's not inflationary.
Yeah, claims that's not inflationary.
Well, I mean, I get back to this. I mean, we make this point ad nauseum on this show, but I think since we're one of the few people doing that, I think it probably all comes out in the wash. But this is all being done on purpose.
It is.
I mean, if if you look at a thing and you say, what kind of motivations would explain these behaviors? Sort of do it Jeopardy style, you know, look at the answer and ask the question based on the answer. Right. Okay, what are the motivations for doing? You know, if you told me, well, we're gonna debase the currency by just printing trillions of dollars, and we're gonna spend it purposely on wasteful things. We're gonna completely destroy our energy independence and our ability to have cheap energy in our economy. We're going to sow as much racial strife as we possibly can with ridiculous notions of equity where everybody is supposed to actually end up in the same place. I would say, well, then the question is, what can I do to destroy that society? Okay, those are the answers. Yep. This stuff is being done on purpose, and I think these people just hope that they can, I think they just say, well, you know what? Maybe we can get elected, maybe we can't, but we're doing a lot of good damage here. It's like a battle. So this is a war.
Well, it is.
Right.
It is. That's a good analogy.
And that's what these people are doing, and they're using the criminal class. They're you know, I mean, the idea that they, Illinois, the state of Illinois, just passed the most liberal no cash bail policy statewide in the country, where second-degree murder is not a detainable offense. You're telling me that is not calculated to perpetuate chaos and mayhem on the citizens of the state of Illinois? Then you can't think right. You're not capable of doing thoughtful analysis.
Absolutely, absolutely. With that, we got to take a little break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about how the satellite temperature data is punching holes, not in the ozone, but in the climate hoax. So you won't want to miss that. Stay tuned for more America in Danger. We'll be right back.
Are you afraid to answer the phone because of bill collectors? A Chapter 13 plan can help. Chapter 13 allows people with too many bills to work out a debt repayment plan under federal law. It helps you control your debts instead of your debts controlling you. Chapter 13 stops creditors from harassing you and stops repossessions and foreclosures. It allows you to answer the phone again without fear or worry. Call H. Frank Allen, Attorney at Law, a debt relief agency providing bankruptcy relief under the Bankruptcy Code.
Safe and secure. These two words are simple yet powerful. In order to feel this way, you should know that you have the tools necessary to provide safety and security for yourself and your loved ones. As with any tools, learning how to properly use them is best learned from experts who we know we can trust. Experts who have a proven track record and a commitment to serve and protect. Enroll now in Sheriff Keystone's North Carolina Concealed Handgun Carry class, taught at the CPF Training Center in Rocky Mount. Sheriff Stone utilizes a first-in-class classroom environment and indoor firing range. This ensures a training experience that is welcoming to both first-time firearms students and those with more experience. An attentive staff that takes time to teach students the legal requirements of becoming a permitted concealed carry citizen. In addition, Sheriff Clee Atkinson teaches students situational awareness, self-defense, and skills needed to avoid becoming a victim. As you know, Sheriff Stone and Sheriff Atkinson have committed their lives to serving and protecting. There is a reason Sheriff Stone and Sheriff Atkinson's class book in advance. Come learn from two of the region's most seasoned and professional public servants. Safety and security, two simple but powerful words that can be a part of who you and your family are. Call 252-813-8898. Register today.
All right, we are back, and as I said before the break, there is more and more data coming out punching holes in this climate hoax we've been
subjected to
for so many years. No different than the COVID hoax,
right?
That is having many holes. It wouldn't hold water, Flex Seal wouldn't even fix that.
Right.
But anyway, Satellite data shows that almost all climate model forecasts over the last 40 years were wrong. And the ones that were right were considered flukes.
Right.
Because they were wrong too.
Right.
Because they missed it on other areas. But yeah, we've been told for so many years now, 50 years now.
Again, going on as long as I can remember, which, you know.
Yeah, right at 50 years or so when it was declared that we're entering a period of global warming.
Right, catastrophic global warming. There's only 10 or 12 years left. So we've been in this perpetual state of 10 or 12 years away from disaster for 50 years.
And the interesting thing, when they had the hearing in Congress, none of the congressmen there had the wherewithal to say, yeah, no kidding, the air conditioner's broken. Mm-hmm. Because the night before the hearing, the air conditioner broke in the room that they were having the global warming hearing.
That was on purpose. Don't you think that was probably on purpose?
That was all staged. It was absolutely staged.
They want everybody sweating in there while people watch these hearings.
Exactly. Well, it's not just the climate models that are wrong. Every prediction that's been made of gloom and doom and dire consequences.
Oh, none of them have come true.
Not a single one. That's what's so fascinating about it. Not a single prediction has come true.
That's right. They can't even claim, the blind squirrel finding the nut, kind of statistical success. I mean, they've been wrong every time about everything,
Every time. Well, they can claim that.
Right.
That's
consistent.
Right. We have the consistent. They can use that as a
promotion. That's right. It's like we're uniquely wrong. We're so wrong. It's like the George Costanza thing where he said, I'm going to go against every one of my instincts. And when he did that, he started having some success, in dating and his professional life and everything. That's a Seinfeld reference for those who don't know. One of the classic episodes there.
All this stuff with the client. There's another letter in the paper. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's just it's painful to see these individuals. And this one is a doctor.
Right.
A doctor of what? I have no clue.
Sure, right.
But anyway, they go on, they blather on about increases in floods and heat waves and disasters and hurricanes and storms. Well, I don't know where they're getting that information, because all of the relevant data today, all of the credible data today says that's not happening.
That's right. And more to the point, deaths from natural disasters are down 90%, in a population that has increased by at least 100% or more in the past 100 years.
That is correct.
So even if you accede to the notion that there's some, climate change that's occurring, man-made climate change, which I don't deny that the climate's constantly in a state of flux.
Sure.
Okay, that's just nonsense to assert otherwise. Yep. All right. But this idea that anthropogenic, i.e. human-caused global warming is going to kill us all in 12 years, and unless we all turn everything over to a global socialist model that controls production and controls energy consumption, and we let the smart people decide how we're all going to, only then can we avert this disaster. That's what they're telling you.
That's exactly what they're telling you.
And what this reveals here, and this is very good actual scientific information. It's a professor, Nicholas Scaletta, a physicist from the University of Naples, that's Italy. Okay, not a bastion of right-wing conservative thinking, notwithstanding that they finally elected somebody maybe who can turn their ship around a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, basically what he's pointing out is that satellite data, which is really a much better way to make temperature measurements globally, it shows a much lower amount of heating and warming than all the surface temperature measurements that are taken with instrumentation in these various settings.
Yeah.
They're basically saying that the surface temperature measurements aren't very good.
Sure.
Compared to the satellite data. Satellite data does a much better job of predicting these numbers. And a very important thing here is that when they go back, and we've talked about this, for a model to be a good model, you should be able to take data for which you know the result.
Yep.
We have these data, and this was the outcome here. You should be able to put that data in your model, and have it come pretty close to predicting the actual result. That's how you know you've got a good model. None of these global warming models do that.
No,
they all grossly overpredict the amount of warming that will occur, okay, or that has occurred, and so that means that their predictions for the future are similarly flawed.
Absolutely.
And they're little better than just educated guesses with a bias toward warming, because that's the outcome they want. Yep. If they wanted a global cooling model, they could be convincing everybody of that just as easily. Just as easily.
You know, as far as the storms and all that they talk about, you know, they're always talking about, oh, the storms are so much worse now than they were. Well, that's not true.
Not true
at all, because NOAA, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, they track cyclonic energy. Now, that's the total energy that a storm puts out.
Right.
That's the winds, the rain, that's everything included in that storm. It has not increased since they began tracking that.
Right.
So to say storms are worse, well, no, they're not. In
and
fact,
actually,
we've entered a period of fewer landfalling hurricanes.
Right. Historically, over the last 100 years, according to NOAA, storm frequency has decreased by 0.25%. Now, that's a small amount, but it's a decrease, not an increase.
Right.
It means that at worst, or at best, we're at static equilibrium with the frequency. In other words, nothing's really changing very much.
Right.
Always had hurricanes. You know, if you increase the population in an area like, say, Florida, where in the 40s I think they had a few million people, now they have 40 million people living there.
Right.
Okay. Is that right? Is it 40 million? I think it is.
I think it's somewhere around that. I'm not 100% on that.
I'm not sure that's right. It might be. I know California is that. Yeah, it's not 40 million, but anyway, it's a huge. Hundreds of percent greater than it used to be, with lots of development in areas that were previously uninhabitable.
Yep.
All that swampland down there in the marsh, and so one of those storms comes by where you got this geographic entity sticking out into the tropics. Okay, that's what Florida is.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so as long as those conditions exist, when one of those storms rakes over that, it's going to do damage. So you live there with that understanding, and you take appropriate measures. Now, I have to say, I don't agree with the policy that we subsidize the insurance for people who choose to live in those places. If you want to live in a place with a high risk of having your home destroyed, you should foot the bill for that insurance.
Absolutely, just like state and local taxes.
That's right.
We shouldn't subsidize those.
That's right, but that's really a different discussion. But the bottom line is, there's no this climate hysteria is made up. It's a contrived story to separate you from your wallet and your liberty and your standard of living.
Absolutely.
And your autonomy.
Absolutely is. Well, there's a interesting development in the Democrat Party this week.
I think I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, one of the at one time one of the gold stars of the Democrat Party, Tulsi Gabbard, has resigned from the Democrat Party. Now, this isn't something that just happened this week. I mean, she broke with the Democrat Party a good while ago.
Right.
When Hillary Clinton called her a Russian spy, a Russian asset. She's got a little bit of common sense. Now, that's not to say that she's a conservative, because she's not. She's still a liberal.
She is. She's sort of a gun grabber, I think, and a little bit of a global warming, although I look to her to change those positions, because like all politicians, part of what she's doing is
catering.
Catering and shifting with the wind. But I think she's fundamentally sincere in that she can't identify with what she perceives, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, but in her little talk or her speech that she gave, or her delivery about why she left, she said, the Democrat Party has become a party of elite wokester, perpetual warmongers who have no reverence for people of faith or no reverence for our Constitution. Now, I'm paraphrasing, but that's fundamentally what she said. Okay, and she's right about that. That is 100% spot-on analysis.
Absolutely.
And I think, she'd been in the military, and, I think she's probably, because of her female and minority status, she's probably infected with a little bit of that thinking.
Sure.
But I think maybe she's figured out that, that's not really that on the list of things, that's kind of low. That's not really what has driven her life. And so maybe she's getting red pilled a little bit in a genuine way.
I think so. And in her talk, she called for other Democrats to walk away from the party as well.
Right.
And I fully advocate that, because anyone that can identify as a Democrat today, I really don't understand how.
Well, again, that gets back to my statement earlier. You're incapable of doing objective thinking.
Yes, you are. Now, I'm not a Republican. I'm registered unaffiliated.
Right, same here.
I lean Republican in elections because they represent more of my values than the left does.
Truly and only the lesser of two evils.
Exactly. Because there are plenty of Republican scoundrels, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
There are plenty that I would love to see booted out of office this very second.
Right.
But, if you're still identifying as a Democrat and you can support transgender mutilation of children as young as 5 and 6 years old.
Drag shows for 5-year-olds.
For first and second graders.
Right. Wide open border. Literally wide open border.
Unfettered crime. No bail.
Cashless
bail is, you've heard of the get out of jail free cards. Well, that's it.
Right.
Those things, taxes through the roof. Restrictions on your personal liberty. That is the Democrat Party
of
today.
Is. Well, essentially, I know this sounds probably hyperbolic, but fundamentally, the Democrat Party are a bunch of communists now.
Yes, they are. They have been fully taken over by the communists. Now, there are still some holdouts in the Republican Party, but there are those who I would call communist assets in the Republican Party. Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, Murkowski, Romney.
Yeah,
there's a whole list of them.
It's unbelievable. Lisa Murkowski votes with Democrats like 60% of the time, and Mitch McConnell is actively supporting her campaign over her Republican challenger. And the only reason Murkowski even has a chance is because of that ranked preference voting anomaly, an abomination they have in Alaska, which she kind of engineered as a way of keeping her spot. If you recall, she got booted out during the Tea Party, she did some kind of write-in shenanigans and somehow managed to, through their ranked choice voting, managed to retain that seat. She was fundamentally kicked out during the Tea Party era.
Yes, she was.
She is a horrible specimen of a politician, and just the worst of the rhino types.
Absolutely.
I hope she gets romped on this election.
You and me both.
But Mitch McConnell would be supporting her. That tells you where he is.
Oh yeah. And he refuses to fund some of Trump's endorsees.
Right.
Which to me, that violates the age-old rule of, if you're a Republican, you don't speak badly of Republicans.
Well, we know what Mitch McConnell wants, and we know what he is.
Yes, we do. And with that, we're out of time. Hope you enjoyed the show. Check out our YouTube channel at America in Danger TV. That's America in Danger TV. Don't forget to put that on there. It won't come up right.
Although since it's on YouTube, it might need to be renamed America in Danger because they did cancel a couple of our episodes.
Yes, they did. They pulled a couple episodes, said that we were spreading misinformation.
That's right.
One of them I appealed on, and one of them I didn't. They pulled it. But nonetheless, check it out. If you want to hear something that we said repeated, go look at our video or pass them around. You want somebody to look at it?
Post some comments.
Absolutely, post some comments. And with that, we're out of time. We'll see you next week. Have a great week. Good night.
Night.